You check the date on your food every single day. That little stamp on your yogurt, the number on the tin, the label on the bottle. But the expiration date is hiding three secrets that most people never think to question. That best before date? It doesn't mean what you think it means. The sell-by label? It was never designed for you. And the entire system we rely on? It traces back to a military crisis and a cash prize from Napoleon Bonaparte. Today, we're pulling them apart, one by one. Welcome to Everyday Secrets, where ordinary things reveal extraordinary histories. Most people assume that food is dangerous to eat after the date printed on the label. You see the date, you see it's passed, you throw it out. It seems obvious, it seems logical, but it's almost completely wrong. To understand why, you have to go back to Britain in the early 1970s. Supermarkets were expanding fast. Packaged food was flooding the shelves, and governments were under pressure to give consumers clearer information about what they were buying. In the UK, new food labeling regulations came into force, requiring manufacturers to indicate how long a product would remain at peak quality. The European Community followed with a standardizing directive in 1979, locking the system into place across member states. But here's what those officials were actually trying to communicate, and what got lost in translation. Here's what's actually happening. Best before is a quality guarantee, not a safety warning. Think of it like a hotel checkout time. You can technically stay a little longer, but the hotel isn't promising the sheets will be freshly pressed. The food on the other side of that date is almost certainly still safe. It may just taste slightly less crisp, slightly less bright. The only label that is genuinely a safety warning is "Use by," and most products in your fridge don't carry one, which means that yogurt sitting one day past its best before date is not a health risk. It's a marketing deadline. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that roughly 1/3 of all food produced globally is wasted every year. And misreading date labels is consistently identified as one of the leading causes. The date stamp was supposed to protect you. Instead, it taught a generation to throw away food that was perfectly fine to eat. But that's not the only secret hiding in plain sight, because the sell-by date is doing something even stranger. And it was never intended for the person holding the product at all. The sell-by date looks like a consumer protection measure. It's printed right there on the front of the packaging, in plain view next to the price. But that label was not invented for the shopper standing in the aisle. To understand this, you have to go back to London in 1950. Marks & Spencer, the British retailer, was among the first companies in the world to stamp dates on packaged food products, not for customers, for stockroom staff. The problem they were solving was straightforward. How do you efficiently rotate inventory across dozens of stores when your warehouse teams can't tell at a glance which delivery arrived first? The date stamp was a logistics code, a backstage tool built for clerks and shelf stackers, not for shoppers. But as packaged food spread into every supermarket across the world, the dates migrated to the front of the label, and consumers began reading them as safety information they were never designed to carry. Now, here's the one that really surprised me, because canned food isn't just hiding a secret. It's hiding a story that goes all the way back to Napoleon Bonaparte, and a prize that changed the way humanity eats. You've walked past canned food your entire life. You've gripped those tins, stacked them in cupboards, assumed they'd last a year or two. But a properly sealed can doesn't last a year or two. Under the right conditions, it can outlast a human lifespan. And we have documented proof. To understand this, you have to go back to 1795. France was at war with most of Europe, and Napoleon Bonaparte faced a problem that no cavalry charge could solve. His armies were starving on long campaigns, far from reliable food supplies. The French government offered a prize of 12,000 francs, roughly equivalent to several years of an average worker's wages, to anyone who could invent a reliable method of preserving food for soldiers in the field. It took 15 years of experimentation. But in 1810, a French chef and confectioner named Nicolas Appert finally collected that prize. His method was simple and radical. Seal food inside glass jars, then submerge them in boiling water long enough to destroy whatever was causing the spoilage. Appert had no idea why it worked. Germ theory would not exist for another 50 years. He only knew that it did. That single military problem and one man's determination to solve it gave us the sealed preservation system that still lines every supermarket shelf on Earth today. Here's what makes this extraordinary. In 1865, an American steamboat called the Bertrand sank in the Missouri River near present-day DeSoto, Nebraska, carrying a cargo of canned provisions bound for gold miners in Montana Territory. The wreck sat undisturbed on the riverbed for over 100 years. When archaeologists excavated it in 1968 and 1969, they found the cans still intact, their seals unbroken. In 1974, the USDA Food Safety and Inspection Service tested the contents: brandied peaches, oysters, plum tomatoes, and mixed vegetables. The food was found to be microbiologically safe. Think of it like a time capsule forged from steel, the sealing principle that Nicolas Appert invented to feed a Napoleonic army had accidentally survived a century on the riverbed of the Missouri. The expiration date on the label would have said something like 1867. The food was still safe over 100 years after that. Here's one more detail that surprises almost everyone. In the United States, there is no federal law requiring expiration dates on the vast majority of food products. The FDA mandates date labeling on precisely one category: infant formula. Everything else, every single date stamped on every can, bottle, carton, and package you have ever read and trusted, is either voluntary or governed by a patchwork of inconsistent state regulations with no unified standard. The system that billions of people treat as a precise scientific safety guarantee has no single federal authority standing behind it. So next time you check the date before throwing something out, you'll know you're not reading a safety verdict. You're reading a quality estimate invented for shoppers who were never supposed to see it, printed on a technology designed for Napoleon's army inside a system that no government ever fully standardized. Not a guarantee, but a logistics code, a military invention, and a quality note, all hiding in the same tiny stamp. If any of these surprised you, hit the like button. Share it with someone who threw out perfectly good food this week, and subscribe to Everyday Secrets for more hidden stories behind the things you never thought to question. Because the most ordinary objects always have the most extraordinary histories. Which of these three surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments.